MoreSteam is turning 25 years old, and to commemorate that occasion, we have two very special episodes of Quality Time with MoreSteam for you. On this episode, we will be joined by MoreSteam founder and CEO Bill Hathaway. We'll talk a little bit about the history of MoreSteam, the founding of MoreSteam, some of the changes and evolution at MoreSteam. It is a great conversation. And then in our next episode, which also happens to be the 25th episode of Quality Time with MoreSteam, we will showcase our 25 most memorable moments that have happened on the show so far. Both of these episodes commemorate 25 years at MoreSteam. We appreciate you being here with us today. And now my conversation with Bill Hathaway. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by MoreSteam founder and CEO Bill Hathaway. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi Dan. Thanks for having me. I was wondering if I was going to ever get to be on this show, and I'm kind of gratified that you've worked your way down the barrel a little bit to the towards the bottom.
Well, we wanted to save it for a special occasion. And of course, right now is a special occasion because on February 29th, 2000, MoreSteam was born, which makes, depending how you look at it, either February 28th or March 1st, 2025, the 25th anniversary of MoreSteam. And what better occasion to have the founder and the CEO of MoreSteam than in celebration of MoreSteam's 25th birthday. And in light of that, lots of questions, lots of interesting things about the history of MoreSteam that I would love to discuss with you today. First, I would love to know some of your first experiences with quality, process improvement, that whole field.
Well, first of all, at 25 years, you're kind of pushing the limits of my memory. It's hard even to imagine that we've been at it this long. But my first experience with quality really in it at an industrial level was when I graduated from business school, and for some yet unknown reason decided I ought to work for Ford Motor Company in an assembly plant.
Uh-huh.
While my my all my classmates went off to Wall Street or to fancy consulting gigs or the like. I remember talking to I was interested in operations, and a professor told me, well, the automotive industry needs a lot of help, and that would be really challenging. Maybe you ought to think about that. So
Uh-huh.
they did need a lot of help. They weren't actually looking to me as it turns out, to provide that help too much. But I went. I started as a supervisor in the trim shop of an assembly plant. So my first real exposure to the kind of the on the floor dynamics of quality was when I was in charge of a zone where we installed the instrument panel, and there was a locating pin that was on the firewall that the instrument panel was supposed to kind of position itself on and instrument panels are pretty heavy. So this was a four-man job,
Right.
to on either side of the car, inside and outside, trying to get this thing, feed all the wire harnesses through and lift this heavy thing into place. And they weren't lining up. So the employees were kicking the instrument panels to get them into place. and I'm at the time, what was I, 26 and brand new, and basically just kind of thrown into this maelstrom of activity. And I'm saying, hey, hey guys, this doesn't seem like this is a great idea. Maybe we ought not be kicking the instrument panel, the radio, and the AC controls, and trying to get this part to fit. And they said, well, that's the only way we can get it in. And
Wow.
so we had to line down a lot that day, and I got a lot of unwelcome attention. My general foreman called on the phone and said, "You shut the line down one more time, you're fired."
Oh,
So, so that was my first introduction to quality, and I mean, I tell that story because I think it highlights that quality is not ever easy.
Right.
There was a book at the time that came out, Quality is Free, and maybe in a large sense it is. You know, it pays for itself. I certainly believe that, but at the operational level, it's not really free for the people that are trying to make it happen. It's always hard. It always involves hard choices. It always requires a little intestinal fortitude. I didn't get fired. We did
Good.
figure out how to stop kicking instrument panels into place. It wasn't immediate, but we did figure that out.
You spent quite a bit of time in manufacturing in various capacities before you started MoreSteam. So, what got you thinking about starting MoreSteam back in 2000? And what was your mindset like? Because you're leaving good jobs in the manufacturing world to go out on your own as an entrepreneur with something completely new. What was your mindset like then?
Well, I think it's probably not a stretch for anyone who's spent some time in manufacturing. And at this point, I'd been in manufacturing for what, dozen, 12, 13 years. It's not a stretch for anyone to think that they might want to be imagining something different, doing something different. Because I mean, it's tough. It's demanding, and the automotive business particularly so. It's like, I mean, I think it's like automotive dog years. You know, if you spend 10 years in automotive, it's more like 70 of your lifespan. Um, but I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I had some time. I would work for a turnaround in a turnaround situation where I kind of naturally was going to be leaving that situation. And I had about a year. And like a lot of people, I was just casting about thinking, all right, what else could I do? What could I do that might be more interesting, that might have more impact, and I really wanted to have my own business. I think I worked with a lot of people that weren't that great, to be honest. I worked with people that were, when you work for any big company, it's kind of potluck who you end up working with. You don't get to pick the people
Right.
you work with. And I thought, man, if I want to work with people that I want to spend time with. And I don't want to work with people that are negative, that are bad energy, that are dishonest, that are whatever. And the only way to stay away from those kind of people is be in a position where you don't hire them. So that was a bit of a motivating factor. And I'd been exposed to, so at the time, this turnaround company was a plumbing products company. We were making ceramic products literally out of dirt, out of clay and ground materials. So you can imagine there's a lot of variation in that.
Sure.
Consequently, we had just an enormous scrap rate. It's like 20% scrap, very expensive, very wasteful. And I was researching, this was 1998. Lean Six Sigma, or Six Sigma at the time, was a very consultant driven industry. Consequently, it was pretty expensive. It was still kind of a limited resource in a sense. There was a lot of the providers had a lot of pricing power. So I had this scrap problem. I thought I should get some engineers trained as black belts so we could really be systematic in going after these problems. And it was $29,500 in 1998 to send a single black belt to 4 weeks of training delivered by ASQ at the time to go through black belt training. I thought that's crazy.
What
I
is that,
mean,
like $50,000 in today's money?
yeah, I mean, it was more than I mean, think about it. 4 weeks of training and it was much more than a year of graduate school. So I thought, well, who's going to do that long term? I mean, there's a huge pricing umbrella and to get under, right? And so, what if we could use technology to deliver this training? What if we could build an online course? The internet, I mean, it's kind of hard to believe back then. I mean, this was almost before, I mean, Google was formed, I don't know, late 90s. It wasn't really on the scene. And the internet was really early. You really couldn't even play videos over the internet, hardly.
People
And
were still
so,
using Ask Jeeves.
yeah, right. Exactly. And and there wasn't really much in the way of e-learning. There was some computer-based training. It was more kind of delivered by CD, something like that. I think that originally I thought I'll just build a website. It'll have lots of information and I can sell ads and maybe that could be a business. And I kind of started down that path. And then there's a big internet bubble meltdown at the end of like in 99 or 2000. I thought, well, that's not going to be a good plan because ad rates just went way downhill. And then I thought, it kind of occurred to me, well, if the same information I'm going to give away, we could take it further, create an online course. And surely if it's a lot less expensive than the going rate, you can find a market for that. So not knowing what I didn't know, which was a lot, there was a lot I didn't know. Thought, well, I could just do that. So I spent a year developing content and found a developer to help. My wife would ask me every day, now, who exactly is going to buy this thing? What are you building, and who exactly is going to buy this?
Bill, the name. Early on, one of the first things
Yeah.
entrepreneurs have to deal with is, what do I name my company? And the name MoreSteam has generated a lot of discussion, a lot of comments. Can you tell us the origins of the name MoreSteam?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because so I worked for Raytheon, and I was at Amana Appliances, and the president, my boss, the president, he was a funny guy, and he would yell down the hallway. So this is a public company, so end of the month and particularly end of the quarter was kind of a lot of stress to try to hit the numbers. And he would yell down the hallway, "More steam! We need more steam! You sales guys better throw some coal on the fire down there. We need more steam." So when I was thinking about a name, and I wanted something that was sort of generally about process improvement or operational excellence, or had that connotation of more power. Let's bring more to bear. I didn't want something that would pigeonhole. It was a label, a known label that would be kind of limiting in terms of what you might end up doing, right? I think our approach at MoreSteam has always been pretty ecumenical in terms of process improvement, and the currency of the day has been Six Sigma, Lean. The labels to me don't matter too much. The thinking matters a lot more, and the practices that support that thinking, and whatever call it whatever you want. So that was why I picked it. But over time, people will. So we put this thing on our web. There's just a joke on our website a long time ago that more steam was attributed to Admiral Harbrecht, famous Admiral Harbrecht, who used to fall down to the boiler room. More steam. We need more steam. And someone read that, and on more than one occasion have asked us, who is this Admiral Harbrecht? I can't find anything about him anywhere.
I am one of those people, Bill, because the first time I actually saw that story, I tried to research that admiral, and I asked Lindsay about it, and she told me the origins of the
Yeah,
stories.
Bill made it up.
Yeah, I was one of the people who looked for that admiral, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this admiral has got to be the least well-known admiral in history.
It's like a lot of things I've made up, Dan. They're not worth researching.
When you finally made the leap, Bill, because you ran the business out of your home for a while, right?
I did. The dog and I ran the business out of mine. He was the first officer of the company.
VP of security.
He was the vice president of security. Yes. In fact, early on, we had a customer, an aerospace customer, called and wanted to have a meeting, wanted to come to Columbus. I'm running the business out of my study at home. And he called and wanted to have a meeting in Columbus. And I was on the phone, and the dog started barking at the UPS guy or something. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's bring your dog to work day." He didn't miss a beat. He said, "Oh, yeah, I understand." And I think I had some friends that had an office somewhere, and arranged to borrow their conference room. I picked this guy up at the airport, and we went to, it wasn't a sleight of hand thing. I just didn't really want to sit down in my dining room with him.
Right.
So it was kind of funny. We went to, there was a commercial on at the time about some internet startup that didn't really have an office, that And I remember it was kind of like they were taking some customer through somebody else's office, trying to kind of fake like they were bigger than they were, and it kind of felt like that in a way. But yeah, and that client is still a client here 20 some years later, so that's
Wow.
kind of neat.
Well, eventually you did have to move into an office, and since then moved two more times, I believe. What was that initial thought process? I need an office now. This business has grown too big to run from my study.
Yeah, and when you start hiring local, so I had some people kind of in a distributed workforce before that was even really a thing. But I was at the point where I needed to hire local employees, and then having other people in my house all day wasn't really that. The idea of that wasn't really that attractive. So it became time to find an office, and I hired a woman named Amanda, and who was great. She was just super. And we found a small office. I didn't have any office furniture because I had to order some, right? So I had a card table and folding chair or something, yeah,
Right.
for a week or two before we got some furniture. And I remember, see, I don't know why she was so had so much faith, but she took the leap. And I remember her husband came by like the next day, and it was very obviously, I need to check out this situation that my wife has gotten into with this, whoever this guy is this like, is this a real thing? Is this what, yeah, is she safe? Is this like, what is this business anyway? Is do I need to be worried about this thing falling apart? And Amanda, I wanted to say Amanda she was so much fun because people would come by trying to sell us stuff, the
Right.
typical walk by, the bankers and the people selling pictures for offices and all kinds of stuff, right? And we played this game, like anybody who came in our office trying to sell us something, that we would sell them something. So we would, so these people would come by, the bankers would come in, and she would say, she'd be like, "Hey, dude, have you ever considered becoming a Lean Six Sigma green belt?" And blah blah. And you could you could have a much better career trajectory, and you could make more money, all this stuff, right? And they'd start backing up towards the door. And that's when we knew we were successful. When we didn't have to tell them to leave, that they wanted to leave, because we were hitting them with the full on sales pitch. Our hope was that they would go back and put notes in their customer management system, whatever, their CRM or whatever, that don't call on these people, because you're going to get your arm twisted.
Bill, I've interviewed many entrepreneurs over the years, and one of the things that is common is that mistakes have been made along the way, and that the entrepreneurs have learned from those mistakes, which really is the heart of process improvement. As you experiment and you
It
find out what
is.
works, it doesn't work, and you've learned from what doesn't work. What were some of the mistakes that you made, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from those mistakes?
It's funny you bring this up, because I was thinking about this yesterday, and I made a list of my mistakes, and now it's a longer list now because I did this 2 years ago, 3 years
Yeah.
ago, and so it's longer than it was then because I've made more mistakes. But I made a list because I was speaking to some college class at Notre Dame, and I thought, well, I don't like, everyone wants to go in and brag about the brilliant things they've done. Maybe it's more interesting to talk about the dumb things I've done or the mistakes I've made. Maybe there's more to be learned from that. And I started making a list, and it ended up being like pages long. It was kind of a long list. I think and I looked at this afterwards. I thought, how is it possible I could make so many mistakes and still be in business?
Right.
And it's kind of a powerful message. I think that if you get the big things right, you're in a and certainly I was lucky early on. So there was this kind of market dynamic and popularity of Six Sigma at the time, Lean Six Sigma. And it was a bit of a scarcity, and it was expensive. So it was people who wanted to be trained often couldn't get into training, and there weren't a lot of ways to do it, and there just weren't many options, and so the timing was kind of lucky. And there's a lot to be said for being in a business that has some margins. I mean, once you cover your fixed costs, software has good margins,
Hmm.
and right, and I was lucky to hire some really good people. We've always been lucky to have just super great customers who are. I mean, you think about this practice area, people who are doing this kind of work of trying to make things work better are not fake. They're not fakers. They're not the promoters and the slick operators move on to other things that are easier.
Hmm.
They don't spend their time in process improvement because it's hard and you can't fake it. And you got to get it's messy and you got to get it's a contact sport. Consequently, the people that we deal with in and outside of the business who want to do this kind of work are the kind of people you want to hang out with. And so that was really lucky. So a lot of I think that some of the biggest, early on, I didn't know what the real potential of the business was. I thought, all right, so how much investment do I put into this? Because is this going to have staying power? Is this still going to be a thing? Is somebody with a whole bunch of money going to wade into the same kind of product line and invest and do something that's really hard to compete with? And so I think if anything, early on, I probably underinvested.
Hmm.
I didn't take as big a bets as I might have. Worked out fine, but to do over again, I probably would have. Early on, it was a very content driven business and less of a software driven business. Over particularly the last 10 years and the last 5 years, it's kind of been amplified is that we really need to be much more software driven. And
Hmm.
so, especially with the investment in EngineRoom, it's much more of a software. And I think the success of MoreSteam has always been balancing being really good at software, but also understanding the content of what we do. There's a lot of folks that are out there who understand the content really well and are trying to make software on the side. And it's not a intramural sport.
No, you got to
And
know what you're doing.
right. And likewise, there are a lot of software companies that have tried to get into the content area who aren't really practitioners. And so marrying the two has been pretty powerful. And so earlier on, we probably could have made more of an investment in software development, hiring more experienced people back in the 2005, 2006. But who's to say, right? At the time, you don't know how things are going to play out.
Tell me a little more about EngineRoom because for a long time, the focus of MoreSteam had been on training Lean Six Sigma, continuous improvement practitioners. And then you develop this piece of software that's really a data analysis software that the practitioners who learn the skills can then use to practice those skills. Tell me about how that came about, your thinking behind that, and how that has grown and continues to grow.
Well, I think we've always had a lot of customers who are pretty economically oriented or were cost driven, a lot of international customers. And the alternatives to do statistical analysis in particular, pretty expensive and have gotten even more expensive. And also, I think we found generally not very easy to use. So what was happening was in our kind of our core business of training, I think we found that a lot of the training time was being consumed by teaching people how to find things in a complex menu structure in some software rather than spending time on teaching them how to think.
We'll be right back with Bill Hathaway, but for the next 33 seconds, your time will be consumed by this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Our integrated approach featuring training, project tracking and execution, simulations, and statistical analysis empowers your team to create a culture where structured problem solving becomes second nature. Visit moresteam.com to learn more. And now back to my conversation with Bill Hathaway. Bill, as we look at 25 years, and I know we mentioned earlier, waiting to have you on the show, and we wanted this very special occasion. You cannot grow a business and continue to be successful for 25 years without being an effective leader. From your 25 years leading and growing MoreSteam, what do you think have been the most important leadership qualities for your success and the success of the business?
Well, I don't know that I'm a great leader, so my secret is to hire people that don't need to be led.
Okay.
I mean, that's really true. I mean, I'm not a micromanager. I mean, I kind of force myself to get into the details of things, but it's probably not my nature. So I really don't want to spend all my time trying to tell people what to do or whatever. I
Right.
want to hire people that show initiative and have creativity and just go do things. And so that's really the secret. That's why you're here, Dan. And well, I mean, okay, so not to put you on the spot, but okay, you're our general counsel
Right.
as well as podcast host,
Indeed, yes.
as well as
I've got a very unique set of skills.
right. So you do a lot of different things. And I like doing different things.
Yeah.
And I think early on, it's a lot easier if you find people that are multi-skilled that can do different things, then you can have smaller teams.
Yeah.
If you need to have a big team because everybody's very specialized and they only do their one thing. So you need a team of, let's say, 5 or 6 to get something done because you need all these different skills represented to build something complicated. And that can work. But if you can have a team of 2 or 3, because people can do multiple things, it's a lot more efficient. If you can have a team of 1, it's super efficient because you never have bad communication between team members.
Hard to scale, though, with a team of 1.
It is. And that's limiting, right? But I think early on, I hired a lot of generalists who, and there were pros and cons to that, right? There were a lot of pros. It was efficient. People could just kind of take things and run with it. The con is they may not be the greatest at, so early on, I was doing some graphics work, right? And I wasn't particularly good at it, but I was a cheap resource. So, but there's a balance there, right? But fundamentally, if you can find people that, I think it gives people also, if you find people and give them a little freedom, a little latitude to grow and do things that they don't normally do, it maybe works a little more interesting as well.
Yeah.
That's been probably the biggest secret, is finding really good people who are smart. And that I think when I look back, the people that haven't stuck here, probably the biggest, Peg and I have talked about this a lot, the biggest critical factor is kind of not connecting with the mission of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to connect with the idea that we are trying to help people make meaningful things work better.
Right.
And it kind of comes full circle. This last week, my mother-in-law had a pacemaker installed, made by one of our clients. And so, yeah, we want that pacemaker to work. We want that pacemaker to have really high quality.
Right.
Same thing happened. My father, a couple of years ago, had a replacement heart valve made by a client of ours. And so, I mean, those are kind of interesting, provides an interesting perspective, right? We're helping other people make things work better, but sometimes that helps us as people, as individuals in our own families.
Those are the stories I really appreciate, when people share the stories about how the work that we have done and the work that we allow them to do actually makes the world a better place. And you can find some of those case studies on moresteam.com. People talk about them at our conferences. Healthcare made better. One of the things that really struck me early on, Bill, when I was first learning about process improvement, continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma, you think about something being successful 99.99% of the time. That sounds great. If I got 99.99
Right.
in school, that would be tremendous. A plus. I'd have scholarships wherever I wanted to go. But if my heart valve only worked 99.99% of the time, that's a pretty big risk.
Yeah, right. So the levels of quality that we need to achieve for certain highly important products, it's kind of daunting. And I maybe just take 1 second. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably involved in process improvement. And so let's just take a minute to celebrate the work that you're doing if you're listening, and the people you work with, and all the unglamorous activities that you're engaged in that are necessary to make the world keep turning.
You recently had a blog on in praise of unglamorous activities. Am I right?
You are right, and it's one of my favorite phrases because it is unglamorous work, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's just not. It's not what you're going to see on the Academy Awards. It's not, it's not going to be highlighted by anyone in Hollywood. It's oftentimes behind the scenes and all too often not very recognized. But boy, it's important.
It's almost like being an offensive lineman in football. If you know the name of an offensive lineman, it's more often than not because they gave up a sack
Right,
or had a
right,
penalty.
right. That's a good metaphor. Yeah. Just grind it out.
Grind it out.
3 yards in a cloud of dust. And yeah.
Bill, as we look forward, we're celebrating 25 years right now, 25 and more to come. What do you see and what are you excited about for the future of MoreSteam?
If I speak for the practice area in general first, and as it relates to MoreSteam, I think the challenge is going to be to change our focus a little to look forward more fully and with new tools and methods, and really put more emphasis on design. We you think about Lean Six Sigma DMAIC projects, for example, and many lean projects, if they're EDCA project or whatever, they're essentially rework. I mean, they're necessary, but are fixing something that doesn't work right, process that generates too many errors, or that takes too long, or is in some other way wasteful. All those things are necessary, useful, but really the challenge for us all is to design processes and products at the get-go that do what we intend them to do, that perform as intended. And so I think even looking at statistical software, so much emphasis on describing the past and not enough emphasis on creating a new reality, in my mind. We're trying to, with EngineRoom, I think we're trying to put more of a focus on design, process playground, which is discrete event simulation. It's got some customers doing just remarkable things with process modeling as part of their lean transformation, using it as a design tool to stress test concepts, and to think about it like pulling the DMAIC project forward instead of doing the DMAIC project after you launch the process and then fine tuning it or fixing it. But can we do that before we launch? Can we build a model that allows us to see the problems early and intervene in a design phase so that we can launch and achieve much higher levels of capability? And not that you can ever avoid cycles of process improvement, but you think about so many products now have such short life cycles.
Right.
They're only out there for a year. You don't have time to launch a bad product and then be doing cycles of improvement on it because it doesn't exist long enough to even get very many cycles in. So it really puts a premium on doing better design work. And I think it's harder in a sense that it's hard to identify who are all the people that are doing all that design work, right? Because with the best of intentions at every large company, there's people out there right now that are creating the next DMAIC projects for everyone. They're launching new customer-facing processes that just don't work very well. And we all experience that every day.
Every day.
So that's our challenge. And there's no shortage of problems to be solved.
No.
And there's no shortage of the need to improve human and technological capability to solve those problems. So I think we've got a bright future. Now we're going to have to continue to evolve in how we approach that problem solving, for sure. There's going to be much more of a marriage of technology and people, right? There's going to be much more with generative AI is going to continue to be game changing. It's going to just supercharge the efforts, which is, I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Bill, 25 years. If you are listening to this podcast, there's a very good chance that you are listening either a few days before or a few days after the birthday, which we can choose because it was born on a leap year day, February 29th. It could be either February 28th or March 1st, whichever you prefer. 25 years of MoreSteam. Bill, any final thoughts, any final reflections, and kind of commenting on what you just said? We will definitely be out of business if there are no more problems left to solve. But that would be a pretty good state of affairs if every problem in the
Yeah,
world had been
we'll
solved.
we'll take it. We'll take that. I mean, I'll just close by encouraging all of you who are listening to actively support. Find the people that you work with that are trying to make things work better, and show them a little love. We've got to stick together. Everyone's got to help each other out. It's not easy, but it is definitely a team sport. It's a contact sport. So the people you work with are going to be getting bruised a little bit now and then. They're going to get knocked over. And I'll just close with a challenge to do what you can to build a community. How's that?
That sounds great, Bill.
And we'll talk
Congrats.
about it. Come back and we'll talk about it in 25 years from now, and see how we all did.
Bill, congratulations on behalf of everyone here at MoreSteam and all of the people that MoreSteam has trained and helped to make the world a better place. Congratulations on 25 years. Thanks for sharing some time with us here on the podcast. It has been fascinating and entertaining. And I hope we'll get you on the show again before the 50th anniversary.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I'm going to hold
Thank
you to
you,
that.
Bill. Okay. Thanks so much, Bill. And thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, moresteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.